Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan and today we need to break down some big Tkachuk updates and some big updates on the trade rumors surrounding him. Of course, as an RFA, Tkachuk has been swirling in controversy over the past couple of weeks with a potential trade in the works. But recently we got info from the Tkachuk sources that apparently he is on the line of asking for a trade and will not end up signing long term. And in an Athletic article, we got a reveal of the teams that are wanting to trade for him and the teams that are heavily interested in a trade right now. So, when it comes to Tkachuk, could we see a trade soon? What are the latest updates and where could he be dealt to over these next couple of weeks? Watch till the end for the full trade rumor breakdown and make sure you hit that subscribe button if you are new. 50% of you guys aren't subscribed, so if you like trade rumor content, this channel is the place to be. Now, full disclosure, I'm pretty sick of a cold right now, so if my voice seems a little bit different or I have a little bit less energy, that is why, but I'm still going to bring you the best content I possibly can, y'all. But we're going to go through, again, this Athletic article breaking down the entire Tkachuk situation from Jeremy Rutherford and Haley Sullivan, and it shares some really interesting details, and again, specifically what's going on with Tkachuk right now, what is he thinking, as well as the teams that are interested in a deal, which is the most important part here. Now, the title says, Tkachuk tells Flames he won't re-sign long-term. Trade likely per sources. And again, from Rutherford and Sullivan, fantastic resources there. And it looks like for Tkachuk, although he hasn't formally requested a trade, the fact that he does not want to sign long-term with Calgary pretty much puts the paint on the wall that Tkachuk and his days with Calgary are pretty much over. Now for the first paragraph, Tkachuk has told the Calgary Flames that he won't be re-signing with the club. Multiple sources tell The Athletic, making a trade of the 24-year-old all-star forward likely to happen soon. Tkachuk has not officially asked for a trade, but the fact that a restricted free agent is unwilling to make a long-term commitment to Calgary will be the driving force behind the decision to move him now. In addition to making the Flames aware that he won't be re-signing with the organization that picked him at number 6 in the 2016 NHL draft, Tkachuk has supplied them with a list of teams from whom he would agree to a long-term contract. According to multiple sources, Tkachuk does have some power over where he might land, given the teams likely won't want to pay as large of a trade price for him as a rental. So some really interesting info there, and a lot of new details on the Tkachuk situation, and again, a situation that will likely result in a trade maybe as soon as the next couple of days. Now, as we did in yesterday's video, we're going to go through all the teams that have shown interest in Tkachuk, and we're going to go through all the teams the Athletic has said are the teams that Tkachuk wants to go to, and the teams making the most amount of effort to get a trade done. And the first team that article mentioned, the first team that the Athletic, Jeremy Rutherford and Haley Sullivan mentioned, is the St. Louis Blues. Now, we know the Blues have had interest for a long time to bring Tkachuk home to them, and when it comes to the Blues fit, it's going to be really interesting. In that last video, I was, again, kind of just going through speculative talk, but if we do see a Tkachuk to St. Louis trade, I feel like the biggest piece that could be involved here is Jordan Kyrou at $2.8 million. He'll be an RFA after next year, but he's the type of player that I think for the Flames, they'll want to have. The problem is, now, since then, there's obviously been a lot less leverage. We've seen the confirmation that Tkachuk will not sign long-term, and for a team like St. Louis, they might not even have to give up a player of that caliber to get a deal done. It might be a lot more quantity than quality for the Flames now. But I still do believe with Tkachuk being an RFA, there's still a lot of leverage for Calgary's side, and we will see that happen in a trade. But St. Louis, I think, is maybe the most likely bet to make a Tkachuk deal happen, especially with the depth that they were kind of erased with in this offseason, with David Perron leaving them, of course, as the most high-profile target. But to me, I just look at the roster and look at what they could give, and I feel like Jordan Kyrou would be the biggest piece there. Now, if the St. Louis Blues don't want to give up Kyrou, then we could probably see a deal maybe potentially involving a couple of big prospects there, maybe Jake Neighbors as a part of things, maybe even Jimmy Snuggerud on top of that, and a first-round pick. I feel like for the Blues, though, it might have to be a pretty sizable roster player, especially considering their cap situation. I mean, they can bring on Tkachuk right now as an RFA, but they will need to sign him, and if he is looking for that $9.5 million long-term deal, then again, I feel like there would have to be somebody major there. We ended ended up speculating that Tarasenko could be a part of things, but again, with his no trade clause, I don't see him really waiving that for the Calgary Flames. And looking at the rest of the roster, there's a lot less options, especially again if Marcos Scandella doesn't waive or has maybe Calgary as one of his no trade teams. And to me, I think St. Louis could be a little bit strapped, but I do feel like maybe you could see a deal involving Krug or maybe Colton Parayko potentially. If the Blues want to go that bold, I feel like that might be one of the more interesting options, especially considering both of them make $6.5 million, and you'd likely be able to just give up one of those guys and make the cap work for you. Even if you might have to give up another player, maybe like an Ivan Barbashev, for instance. But also, we did get a couple of interesting tweets here from Brandon Kiley, who says this: Matthew Tkachuk has submitted a list of a number of teams, I'm going to say 5 or 6, that he's interested in going to, as The Athletic confirms. The dialogue with the Flames has been good. There's a mutual understanding of what has to happen here. And then goes on to say this, again, Riley Leslie of Sportsnet: I'm hearing that the likes of Colton Parayko, Robert Thomas, and Jordan Kyrou are not on the table. But if I'm Calgary, Kyrou is the piece I want. So that again gives us some more details on especially a St. Louis offer. Kyrou might not be the guy unless Calgary makes sure that that is the piece that they need. If St. Louis does have to give up Kyrou in the end, they might just pull the trigger. Now, interestingly enough, the second NHL team that The Athletic ended up listing as teams that are going in on Matthew Tkachuk, and apparently teams that Matthew Tkachuk wants to go to, second place here is interesting, and next up is the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, here's the thing. I feel like Vegas is an interesting fit. The salary cap is going to be a wonky thing to finagle here, and I think for Vegas, that is easily the biggest roadblock. And I think especially for Calgary, I don't feel like they'd trade within the division, especially to a really big rival, at least competitively, like the Vegas Golden Knights, who are trying to take those next steps and becoming the best team in the Pacific. But I feel like when you look at some of the options that the Flames could have, there's a lot of guys with higher cap hits that could be pretty tantalizing. For me, if I'm Calgary, I look at a player like Chandler Stevenson potentially, maybe even a Riley Smith, and those guys have pretty big cap hits. But still for Vegas, I mean, they're $1.3 million below the cap, and they still have guys like Nicholas Watt to re-sign. Maybe Nicholas Watt is a part of things. Maybe Nick Hague as well is a part of things there too. And that could be a part of what Calgary wants, this young group potentially. And I feel like Watt and Hague would be pretty good pickups, but I think there would definitely have to be more on top of that. Definitely a first round pick, probably a top prospect, maybe a player like Brandon Brisson could be the guy that Calgary really wants. And I feel like in a trade like that will be the only situation I see. But again, you still have to get rid of some cap on the books, so there's the huge problem. To me, if we do see a Vegas trade, it would have to at least involve Riley Smith, in my opinion, and probably some other big roster player. Maybe we see Chandler Stevenson, and maybe we see Zach Whitecloud packaged up, or maybe it's a guy like Brayden McNabb. But I feel like for Vegas, though, there's some serious roadblocks that I don't know if they'll be able to get past in a Tkachuk deal. Now, I do need to clarify things, and something I got a little bit mixed up at the start. This is Matthew Tkachuk's list, not necessarily teams that are super interested in Tkachuk, but these are the teams that Matthew Tkachuk wants to go to first and foremost. And the next team that was on this list, interestingly enough, was the Florida Panthers. Now, another team like Vegas that I don't think is going to be all too realistic with the cap situation. They're $3 million down, but I do think there are options for the Flames that they're really going to go after some big fish on the roster, let's say. To me, a player like Sam Bennett or maybe a Carter Verhaeghe would have to be musts, in my opinion, going back to Calgary. Just with that cap hit, around $4.5 million, I think would be pretty easy to offload, and that's somebody that you need to get off the books, in my opinion, if you are the Flames. But besides that, there's not many guys that I really see all too expendable. Maybe Brandon Montour is a part of that, and maybe even Mackenzie Weegar, maybe. But even if you do that, even if you get rid of Bennett and you get rid of Weegar, you're still only about $4.5 million of cap space. And with Tkachuk situation, you're going to have double amount of that to get him onto the books. And I just come up blank as to how Florida can make this deal happen. Unless on top of that, you maybe have Patrick Hornquist too. Next up, going to the next team though on Matthew Tkachuk's list, we're going to go all the way here to the Nashville Predators. And to me, I think the Preds could be a pretty sneaky team in the Matthew Tkachuk sweepstakes. They're a team that can add to that top 6, and they do have the cap space mostly to get Tkachuk onto the books at $8.4 million. You'll definitely have to offload somebody on that roster, but there's definitely a lot less surgery that needs to be made for the Preds to end up acquiring Matty Tkachuk. Now, to me, I think one guy that makes a lot of sense in a deal like this is a player like Dante Fabro, who will be an RFA after next year, $2.4 million, and that will likely be enough to get Tkachuk under the books. And even though you do still have to sign Trenin, maybe you do see Trenin on top of that. Maybe you have Fabro, Trenin, maybe you have a first-round pick, and maybe a top prospect like a Zachary Lemereau. Like, I feel like that could be... I feel like that could be around what we see, not Zachary Lemereau, I'm thinking of Maverick Lemereau. You get what I mean. You get what I mean. But I feel like that type of package would be about sound for the Flames, maybe a little bit more on top of that. But you get a top young defenseman, you get a really underrated young scorer, and you get a top prospect in a first-round pick. And I feel like with the Preds, considering their cap situation, might be one of the more likely teams to actually get this deal done. But now moving on to the last team that could potentially, or last team that Matthew Tkachuk had on his list as of recently, is the Dallas Stars, my favorite NHL team. And I was kind of surprised when Dallas was actually one of the teams that Matty Tkachuk wanted to go to, but obviously I'm pretty happy about that. Now, their cap situation does kind of fool you. They have $11.4 million of cap space, but they do need to still sign Robertson and Jake Ottinger. I don't believe that either of those guys will be included. I don't think they're going to go fully into Robertson, and I also don't think the Flames need Ottinger for obvious Markstrom reasons. But I do think there is a very interesting deal in the works here that could potentially be made. I feel like Roope Hintz is going to be one of the major parts, if not the major part of this deal, makes $3.1 million and is an RFA after next year. And to me, that's the type of player that, even though would suck to give up, absolutely, that's the type of player I can kind of stomach being the main trade piece in a deal. On top of that, I could see Radek Faksa also be included, maybe to make the cap work there securely at $3.25 million for the next 3 seasons. But I feel like on top of that, it would be more of a pick and prospect package, likely a first-round pick, and maybe a player like Logan Stankoven, or if they want to go so crazy, maybe they want to go after a player like Wyatt Johnston, but I don't know if the Stars would be going that crazy. Maybe it would include Johnston, but maybe without a first-round pick. But I feel like for the Stars, they have a good mix of young players the Flames would want, a good mix of salary guys they can include, and also just a need for Matty Tkachuk. I mean, we've seen how they needed to add on those wings. They went after Mason Marchment, of course, in free agency, but if you get Tkachuk and Marchment, that makes their forward group so much more dynamic and so much harder to play against. And although I love Roope Hintz, one of the better underrated two-way centers in the league, to me, I think Dallas would likely include him in a trade package and would likely entice the Flames quite a bit, and alongside the Preds could have one of the better offers out there. Now, going back to this Athletic article, again, one source familiar with Tkachuk's list said that St. Louis, Vegas, Florida, Nashville, and Dallas are options as we went over, but 2 more teams were mentioned here. New Jersey and the New York Rangers are also among the other teams that have expressed interest in the past. So I guess that we have some confirmation here, I guess, from that paragraph that says that all the teams listed have shown interest in Tkachuk and that Tkachuk wants to go there, as it says, with also among the other teams that have expressed interest in the past. So that means that those other NHL teams, Dallas, Nashville, Florida, Vegas, St. Louis, are all in on Tkachuk, as well as Tkachuk wanting to go there. But New Jersey and the Rangers were 2 teams we mentioned in yesterday's video as potential Tkachuk fits, and I still think they are definitely in the running. But 7 teams that are seriously interested in Matthew Tkachuk isn't too bad, and I feel like, especially with the recent news, we're going to see so many teams in on him than there was before, and I think we're going to see a true sweepstakes. And again, it goes on to say a bunch of different things, but the last sentence here says this: at this point, it appears highly unlikely the Flames could convince Tkachuk to re-sign, even if they offered him a huge contract and that captaincy. One source said is expected that Tkachuk will definitely be dealt before the arbitration hearing. And there you go, as well as saying that a hearing is expected to be held between July 27th and August 11th. So there you go, some more confirmations that we'll get this trade soon, saying that Tkachuk will be dealt before arbitration starts, and that's going to be starting on July 27th. So we will likely see a Matthew Tkachuk deal happen in the next week. So grab your popcorn, get your seatbelts on, y'all, because this is about to get nuts. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell for more trade rumor breakdowns as they go live. Of course, make sure you comment down below. What are your thoughts on the Matthew Tkachuk rumors? Where do you see him going? What team do you see trading for him? And what will the package look like? Let us know down below. Of course, share this video with your friends. Get it out to any hockey fans and any trade rumor fans you guys know online. Click this card for all my trade rumor content right on one playlist. My name is Nathan. I gotta go drink some water because I am, again, very, very sick. And I will see you guys in the next video or stream. Goodbye.